Okay, so you can see that we've now come back to a transparent and clear solution, and that is because I have heated the solution to a higher temperature, allowing all the particles we have in there to dissolve completely. So in that solution, we have our real product which we are looking for, and we also have a byproduct which we don't want. The byproduct is the sodium sulfate that have come out of it, and then the real product is the copper saccharinate which we are trying to make. So the next one we have to do, because I expect that the solubility of sodium sulfate is extremely high, when I cool this in ice, I do not expect the sodium sulfate to precipitate out of solution. Some might precipitate to count as impurity to our product, but not much. So what I'm going to do is to turn this off because we already have what we want, and then stop the heating. Okay, so because I'm aware that once I put this in ice, that I'm going to precipitate my product, I don't want this product to be mixed up with the stir bar. So the first thing is to use this is magnetic and get rid of my stir bar, and then place the solution in ice. The reason I'm placing this in ice is so that this can cool down because of time constraint. If I have all the time, I don't need to place this in this ice. I can just keep it on standing, and it will take time for the crystals to appear. But with what I have now, within 5 minutes or less, we should be able to get the crystals of our product precipitating back, and then we can filter to get what we want. One single technique which we can use two different approach to do. So this is what we call a Buchner funnel, and this is your normal funnel. So the difference between these two is that for this, I filter this under pressure, because all I have to do is to attach this in here. This is a vacuum pump, and once I turn that on, what this does is that it extracts air from this bottle, and that air forces whatever water I have on top of this place to go into this bottle. So this filtration is quicker. Then another type, which all I have to do is fold this sandpaper into this funnel, and then I can pour in my solution in here and leave it to kind of filter out and dry out. But I'm going to be making use of this. The reason I'm going to be using this is, one, I want to force some impurity out of the solution, and then two, I want it to dry faster, because once I use this, once the pressure is being forced out, it causes whatever content I have here to some extent to dry. So that's the reason I'm going to be using the Buchner Funnel. All I have to do is just switch on the water. So now you can see that again we form some crystals in here. If I leave it longer, we get more products, so more of the crystals we precipitate. Okay, so what we want to do, like I told you, there are two ways I could do this. If I want this crystal to be as fine as they are, I probably wouldn't use the first process. I will use that, but for time constraint, I'm going to use the Buchner funnel to do this. So if I on the vacuum pump, so right now it's trying to move air out of this. So the first thing I will do is to make sure that the filter paper I have there is actually lapping with the base, so that when I get in my sample doesn't pass underneath, and then I begin to lose some of my sample. So when you read scientific papers, you will see people telling you that you filter something and you wash it with something, with a certain solvent. So I'm going to wash this with cold water. I'm using cold water because I don't want some of my products to redissolve. So washing simply means trying to pour more of this solvent in here. So as the first filtration goes through, it washes off some of the impurities that we are actually trying to discard. Okay, so that is the end of the filtration. And now you can see that we have this fine crystal in there. If I try to compare with the starting material, so that you will know that actually a reaction has taken place. If you look at these two colors, you can see this is the starting material, which is copper sulfate. It is very dark blue. But if you look at the product, which has got a light blue in there, so they are completely different. So that simply means that this product is actually different from the starting materials that we started with. So hopefully by the time we run the IR, we actually see that this is the product we intend to get. So the next thing I want to do now is to simply dry this using what we call a desiccator. So the desiccator will always have a drying agent, which could be silica or whatever it is, beneath. And then once you put this in a sample holder, so all I have to do now is stop this and disconnect this from the vacuum pump. And now I can take back my sample into the sample holder. So that is my yield. Another thing a chemist is interested in is the yield of your product. So how do I do this? I have to measure the mass of the product that I have and then work out what the theoretical yield was supposed to be if every precursor has reacted in the right ratio, and then compare that theoretical yield with my practical yield. So that will tell me if I have 70, 80%, 90% of whatever yield that I'm planning. So for this reaction, we expect that the yield is going to be 90%. So if you are running this reaction and you have something lower than 90%, say 70%, it means that it's either some of your products are still in the stock solution trying to crystallize, or you might have lost some products due to mechanical reasons, maybe by spilling or whatever it is. These are some of the things that affect our yield and try to decrease that. But I cannot measure this sample right now because it's still wet. If I measure it now, you might see that I might have something, a yield that is above 100%. So this is another thing you have to be careful about. Some people run calculation in the lab, measure the yield, which can never be above 100%, and you see they're getting a yield that is like 120%. So the reason might be that you have some impurities which are not supposed to be there, or you have some solvents adding to the weight of your product. So you have to be careful about all this. So to make sure that the yield I'm going to calculate later is actually what is expected, I'm going to now put this in a desiccator and allow it to dry. After drying, then I can weigh and get the mass of this, which will now represent the practical yield of my product.